Good morning, friends. This is Parthiban, Assistant Professor of English, Government Arts College, Karur. Today, we are going to deal with the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Now, I would like to say a few lines about this poet Robert Frost. Robert Frost is one of the major American poets with a truly international reputation. He is American to the core, yet his appeal as a poet is indeed universal. Several of his poems combine simplicity of style with the profundity of thought, which endear him to the scholar as well as the layman. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is one of the popular poems of Frost. It starts with a concrete situation arising from the ordinary life of an ordinary man, but moves on to the philosophical speculation about the relation between man and nature. It presents the conflict between the call of beauty and the call of duty. The poet's experience of life makes him raise fundamental questions about life and man's role in the world. I read this poem for you. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and the frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and the downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Let us look at the message of this poem briefly. Riding towards his home one winter evening, the poet comes near some woods opposite a frozen lake. The snow is falling. The poet is impressed by its beauty. As he watches the sight, he imagines that the wood belongs to a person living in the village nearby. He can enjoy the falling of the snow without the interference of the owner of the wood. As the poet stops in the strange lonely forest, this horse is puzzled. The horse gives a shake to his harness bell to remind the poet if he has been wrong in stopping in that place in the darkest evening of the year. The only other sound at the time is that of the blowing of the gentle wind at the falling of the snow. Beauty gives us the purest happiness. We do not get it at all times, or we may not be able to enjoy the beauty to its full because of certain obstacles. The poet wants to enjoy the beauty of the wood, but he is reminded of his many works. He has duties to perform. He struggles within between the call of beauty and the call of duty. He is conscious of his great responsibilities which he has to fulfill before his eternal sleep. Frost states, "Miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep." The poem, though starts with an ordinary situation from the life of an ordinary man, it reaches a philosophical height at the end. It reveals the poet's deep understanding of life and philosophical questions facing man's life in this world. The rhyme scheme of the poem. Before we go for a line-by-line analysis of the poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, there are some important points to note about the structure or form of the poem, the style in which the poem is written, and the rhyme scheme followed. Frost has an interesting pattern of rhyme. Every first, second, and fourth lines have an end rhyme. But the third line of each stanza rhymes with the next stanza. Frost makes the last four lines of his poem all rhyme with each other. This is a big finale and emphasizes that though the woods are peaceful and intriguing, he must tear himself away to get home. He must repeat that he has promises to keep and miles to go before he sleeps, to remind himself that he does need to have the will to live. Overall, the rhyme scheme is AABA, BBCB, CCDC, DD, and DD. The text of the poem describes the thought of a lone wagon driver, that means the speaker, passing at night in his travel to watch snow falling in the woods. Actually, the poem looks very simple in its usage of language and also in the subject matter. But what strikes us most is the use of special form and rhyme scheme to express the theme so fluently. To mingle the content with the structure is really a tough task. The poem is rich in its use of figures of speech like imagery, alliteration, and personification. It also has an allegorical meaning. So this poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, has been highly acclaimed since its publication. Now we learn the message of the poem. Explanation of stopping by woods on a snowy evening. First paragraph. Whose woods these are? I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. The narrator may be the poet himself of the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Stops by some woods on his way one evening. The narrator knows the owner of the woods and even where he lives. He is a bit relaxed thinking that the owner of the woods lives in the village, and so he won't see the narrator stopping here. Therefore, he can continue watching the natural beauty of his snow-covered woods. Second paragraph. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and the frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. In the second stanza, the narrator of the poem says that his dear horse, whom he is using as his carriage, must think it strange to stop here between the woods and the frozen lake in a dark evening as he normally stops near a farmhouse. The narrator calls his horse my little horse, as it is very dear to him, or maybe the horse is little one, in the literal sense a pony. It may also suggest that the speaker is a humble and ordinary citizen and cannot afford to buy an expensive horse. He also personifies the horse by indicating that it has a thought process and also referring it as he in the next stanza. In this stanza, the narrator suggests that the weather is cold enough to freeze a lake. The expression darkest evening could suggest several things. Maybe the narrator traveler was very depressed due to his long journey or the cold weather. Otherwise, it may also refer to the longest night of the year, the night with the most hours of darkness. In that case, it is 21st or 22nd December when the winter occurs in the northern hemisphere. The third stanza. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The horse is shaking its head, ringing the bell attached to its harness as if he is asking his master whether there is any problem, as it is unusual for him to stop by the woods in the darkness. And the most thing in this stanza of the poem, stopping by woods on a snowy evening, is the sound imageries. There is only three sounds: the sounds of the harness bell, light wind, and the snow flakes. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Here in the last stanza, the narrator describes the woods using three adjectives: lovely, dark, and deep. This indicates that he is enjoying the scene and wants to do so for long. But he has other responsibilities in life. He has to go a long way before he sleeps. So he cannot get the enjoyment for long. He has to move on. And the important thing here is that the poet repeats the last line to attract the attention of the readers. In this very last line lies the allegorical interpretation. Here, sleep may refer to death. We in our real life have many things to look at with awe, many things to enjoy, but in most cases we cannot simply because we have other things to do in our short lifespan. So we have to move on. Concluding lines. Again, some critics interpret it in a different way. The woods here may also suggest the distractions of temptations in the journey of our life. The poet may mean that we should not pay heed to those outward temptations. We should stay focused on our goal and try to reach it in time. We must fulfill our duties before we die, so we have no time to look at other things on the way. We have listened to this poem so far. I hope you would all have enjoyed this poem definitely. Thank you.